Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Baumgardner, Cook, Coram, Court, Crowder, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner, Guzman, Hill, Hill,
Excused.
Holbert, John, Jones, Kagan, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lumberg, Marble, Martinez Humenick, Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Todd, Williams,
Excused.
Zinzinger,
Let's go.
Mr. President.
Here. With 32 present, 0 absent, 3 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Whippersnapper, please come and lead us in the pledge. Please add Senator Hill to the roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the journal, Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the reading of the Journal of Friday, March 9th be dispensed with and approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
March 8, 2018, Mr. President, the Committee on Health and Human Services had in consideration had hearing on the following appointments and recommends appointments to be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the State Board of Human Services for a term expiring March 1st, 2021, Desta Mikla Chanel of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a member of the public on occasion by the resignation of Dennis Edward Swain of Northland, Colorado, appointed. March 8, 2018, the Committee on Health and Human Services had in consideration had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar confirmed. Member of the State Board of Human Services for a term expiring March 1st, 2021, Chris J. Watney of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a member of the public appointed. March 8, 2018, the Committee on Education has had in consideration had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the Higher Education Competitive Research Authority Board of Directors for a term expiring August 21st, 2019, Kim Hunter Reed, Ph.D. of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a governor as appointed and fill the vacancy occasioned by the resignation of Joseph A. Garcia, Pueblo, Colorado, appointed. March 8, 2018, Committee on Education have considered some areas committee records following. Senate Bill 177 be referred to committee to hold the favorable recommendation. March 8, 2018, Committee on Education have considered some areas committee records following. House Bill 1130 be referred to committee to hold the favorable recommendation.
Senate Services.
Correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 5 and 10.
Conference Committee report.
First report of the First Conference Committee on House Bill 1171. This report amends the revised bill to the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives. Your First Conference Committee appointed on House Bill 1171 concerning adjustments in the amount of total program funding for public schools for the 2017-18 budget year and in connection therewith making and reducing an appropriation as met in reports as agreed upon the following. One, that the House accede to Senate amendments made to the bill as the amendment appear in the revised bill. That two, that under the authority granted the committee consider matters not at issue between the two houses and following amendments be recommended. Respectfully submitted, House Committee, Representatives Hamner, Young, and Rankin, Senators Lundberg, Lambert, Moreno.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading transmitted with the revised statutes. House Bill 1098, 1172, 1246. The House has passed on third reading transmitted with the revised statutes. House Bill 1021, amended as printed in the House Journal, March 8, 2018. The House has passed on third reading and returns herewith. Senate Bill 510. The House has adopted and returns herewith. Senate Joint Resolution 7. The House has voted to grant the House conferees on the first conference committee on House Bill 1171 to consider matters not at issue between the two houses.
Message from the reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1098, 1172, 1246, without comment as amended, House Bill 1021.
Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the third reading of bills consent calendar until Tuesday, March 13th.
Motion is to lay over the third reading of bills consent calendar until Tuesday, March 13th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. Third reading of bills calendar. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the third reading of bills calendar until Tuesday, March 13th.
Motion is to lay over the third reading of bills calendar until Tuesday, March 13th. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. General order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself for the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of General Order's second reading of bills consent calendar.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to resolve itself in Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general order's second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general order's second reading of bills consent calendar, and Senator Hill will take the chair.
Good to see you. The committee will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the titles to all the bills on General Order's second reading of bills consent calendar?
House Bill 1066 by Representatives Willett and Foote and Senator Cook concerning clarifying that the Law Enforcement and Defense Council exemption for sexual exploitation of a child crime does not change the discovery procedures for sexually exploitative material. Senate Bill 180 by Senator Gardner and Representatives Witz and Gray concerning the Colorado Trust Code.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the two bills listed on the second reading of bills consent calendar, House Bill 1066 and Senate Bill 180, along with a Judiciary Committee report.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report to Senate Bill 180. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. The motion is for the adoption of House Bill 1066 and Senate Bill 180 on consent. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The two bills are adopted. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Colleagues, the motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, we've had two bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs lead reports that on consideration of the following tax bills being the second reading thereof makes the following recommendations are on. Senate Bill 180 is amended, passed on second reading order, and engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1066 passed on second reading order, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Hill.
I move the report.
Motion for the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 180 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1066 passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General Order, second reading of bills. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of General Order's second reading of bills.
The motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order second reading of bills calendar, and Senator Hill will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. Mr. Carpenter. Majority Leader Hobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over Senate Bills 43 and 116 and House Bill 1138 till Tuesday, March 13th.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 43, Senate Bill 116, and House Bill 1138 until Tuesday, March 13th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over those three bills until Tuesday, March 13th. Majority Leader Hobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over Senate Bill 1 until Wednesday, March 14th.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 1 until Wednesday, March 14th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over Senate Bill 1 until Wednesday, March 14th. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 172?
Senate Bill 172 by Senator Gardner and Representative Lee concerning testing of horse racing licensees for the presence of prohibited substances.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 172 and the committee report of the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee.
To the Ag report, please, Senator Gardner.
Committee report. In committee, members, we added an amendment to clarify that the drug testing that is the subject of this bill be at the expense of the Racing Commission. This is the current practice, and it just confirms that that is the current practice, and I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? The motion is, colleagues, the adoption of the Ag Committee report to Senate Bill 172. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Senator Gardner, there's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 6?
Amendment L006, Senate Bill 172 by
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment 6. What Amendment 6 does is makes a little adjustment on the legislative declaration on lines 19, or actually takes out 20 and 21, replaces it with this language, which is just a little less, I would consider, offensive. So ask for your aye vote.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you. This is a friendly amendment, and members, the importance of the legislative declaration here is that in drug testing, it is an administrative search, and there needs to be special justification for that, and the legislative declaration was intended to do that. We worked with former Senate President Hillman and the senator from Sterling to try to have a formulation that respected the folks in horse racing, and at the same time made clear that we do need the power to do drug testing on those who work at the track. So I ask for an aye vote as well.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I too ask for an aye vote on this amendment. It does do a better job of meeting the requirements that we need in order to do these drug tests while not painting with such broad strokes and implying the culture of this industry. So I ask for an aye vote and appreciate the bill sponsor for working on this.
The motion is the adoption of Amendment 6 by Senator Sonnenberg. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 6 is adopted. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 172? Senator Gardner.
And so make sure your bets are placed. It's post time. I ask for an aye vote.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 172 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 172 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 175?
Senate Bill 175 by Senator Gardner and Representative Lundeen concerning the prohibition against paid union activities by public employees.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 175 and the committee report of the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology.
Great. To the committee report, please.
Thank you. Members, there was some concern from the home rule cities that the application of this bill interferes with their constitutional right to do personnel and to do it solely within home rule cities. And so the cleanest way was simply to remove the application from home rule cities and allow them, as they are constitutionally allowed to do, manage their personnel policy. I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Gardner.
Thank you. Members, this is a very important bill. It is a bill that prohibits the use of public funds for union activities and collective bargaining agreements around the state by our governmental entities and subdivisions, and I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise to say that I agree with the sponsor of this bill when he says that this is an important bill. However, that's where our agreement comes to a bit of an end. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 175, and this bill is confusing. It has a title which really talks about paid union activities by public employees. But then when you get into the meat of it, what is an employment bargain? Meaning any formal or informal employment contract. What do we mean by informal employment contract? Union activities, the definition of union activities means activities that are performed by a union members that relate to advocating for member employees and wages, benefits, terms. So does that mean any time any two union members are discussing their wages and benefits, that we are prohibiting that? But as long as either one of the two employees is not a union member or neither one is a union member, then they can talk about wages and benefits all that they want. So these are some of the questions that this bill brings up. So with that, I would ask for a no vote. I would also point out that in committee, we had 25 people come in and testify against this bill. 25 people come in and testify against this bill. 0 people testified for the bill. So I would ask for your no vote.
Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 175. Why? Because it is discriminatory. This bill states that this bill prohibits the state from entering into an employee contract agreement with any public employee or union to compensate any public employee or third party for union activities. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. But yet, you can have someone from the government agency, let's say go to the chambers of commerce to try to promote a practice or a project, and that's fair. But when it comes to the workers, when it comes to the employees, you're trying to say that cannot take place. That's unfair. Employees should have the right to bargain and to come up with an agreement regarding work practices. And do you know what else it says? It says that the Attorney General will have to come in and enforce this bill's provisions. That's just flat out wrong. This is 2018. Employees should have a right to discuss and to agree and to collaborate on an agreement in reference to how they're going to work. Who are we in this chambers to tell public employees that they cannot organize? My goodness. What year are we in? Why are we turning back the clocks of time? Do you know what unions have done for the workplace? We in this body have the privilege of some of the requirements that have come out of the union movement, which is a 40-hour work week, overtime. And now we want to say that workers can't work with management to resolve some of the issues that are going on in the workplace? How is this supposed to take place if they can't organize, if they can't discuss, if they can't come together? And if they do, it's illegal. Workers have rights. And so does the employer. But to deny an opportunity for employees to come together and resolve some of their issues with management, and to say if they can't get that done, we're going to bring in the Attorney General's office? What's going to happen? You want to throw people in jail? What's the penalty if they do it anyway? Oh, it's in here. If they organize anyway, the Attorney General has to come in and enforce the provisions of this bill. With all the kinds of issues as it relates to identity theft and all kinds of other issues, you want our attorney generals to come in to enforce the ability for employees to be able to discuss and creating a fair and safe workplace? They can't discuss that? What kind of culture is that? What kind of climate are you trying to create for our public employees when they don't even get an opportunity to talk about issues like workplace harassment, like fair wages, like health care benefits, like family leave? What are they supposed to do? Just leave it up to the CEO or the director of the organization with no input from the employees? Because if you get the employees together to have these discussions, that's going to be illegal. And the Attorney General is going to have to rush in and to enforce the merits of this bill. That's not how you create a culture in government, in public employees. They need to have a voice. And what this bill is doing is clearly taking away the voice of the public employee. Why? Everyone has a First Amendment right. Why? This just doesn't make sense to me. If we want to have a good government, a friendly government, part of that is to making sure that we have employees that have a voice. And that's okay. We can disagree, but we should at least have a dialogue. We should at least have a conversation without the Attorney General having to rush in to break up some type of group meeting. I believe our state does better when we listen to the voice of its employees. If we want to have a great government, if we want to have great employees, and we want them to be a part of a great place to work, then we have to make sure that our employees have a voice. And what this bill is trying to do is trying to silence the voice of the employees. It's trying to suffocate them at the expense of fairness and equality and their voice to work? Why? Why would we want to prohibit paid union activities by public employees? Why would we want to do that? Vote no on Senate Bill 175.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, here's the deal. Basically, we know, and I know where the bread is buttered and how things are going to come down on this bill, but we should at least get it on the public record that this bill is an attack on public sector unions, plain and simple. Although proponents of the bill are going to try to imply that bargaining for a salary on taxpayers' time is corrupt, but when do you think private sector employees negotiate their pay? On company time. You don't negotiate for your raise on the weekends. Public employees spend their whole lives giving service to their communities and attacking their ability to collectively solve workplace grievances, to speak up for their pay and benefits, and create a workplace that attracts the best employees, ignores the service of teachers, our police, our firefighters, and to more proudly provide to Coloradans every single day. So back to my first point. This bill is an attack on public sector unions. So if you believe in the validity of public sector unions, you will oppose this bill.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, am very concerned about the language in the bill and informal contract. I don't know what that means. It can mean anything, and it could get people in trouble. The bottom line is that people ought to have the right to sit down and work with one another and come up with a joint proposal, and they should be able to talk about that at work. This bill wouldn't even allow that from my read of it. That doesn't make sense. Unions are a great way for the middle class to grow. My family benefited from them. Probably many of your families did too, or still do. And we should allow the workers the same ability as the employers to talk and organize and come to agreement and have their joint forces join. Otherwise, it's very unfair to the workers. So I ask for a no vote on this bill. We should let people have the conversations they need to have and not put language in that is vague and could lead to a lot of problems.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was just going back and reading the bill. I did not hear it in committee. So just kind of going through, and it's not a very long bill, but one of the questions I would ask is, who brought it? Why? What's the necessity for it? Anytime that we at the Capitol make the decision that we're going to step in and we are going to make sure that we take care of worker and management problems and issues and conversations, I think we've overstepped the bounds. This is about allowing different groups to be able to have that communication. I will go back and just kind of recollect a little bit in terms of my husband and the life that he lived. He grew up in a very, very poor home. His dad was a pipe fitter. He ended up working for Panhandle Eastern Pipeline in Kansas. And they were so dirt poor that they didn't even have indoor plumbing. When his dad started working and being a voice for other workers, they were able to start changing quality of life for people. They were able to start making sure that people had respectability, that they would have a decent pay wage, that they would have benefits, that they would be able to have medical care, that they would be able to have indoor plumbing, that they would be able to have a respectable life for a hard day's labor. That negotiation and working together does not have to be animosity building. It is about making sure that voices are heard. It is about making sure that people are given an opportunity to problem solve and to absolutely reckon with quality work conditions, salaries, health benefits, and make it more productive. Anyone in business knows when your workers are happy, your productivity goes up. The way you treat your workers. Sometimes it can be done without a union, but other times pulling people together to have one voice is important. Again, the fact that no one, from what I understand, came to committee to testify in favor of this bill, my question is why? When we bring legislation, usually we're bringing it for some purpose. We're bringing it to be the voice for those that want to see a change. Where were those voices in committee? If they did not come and they did not testify, but there were many that testified against it, my question is, who are we representing at the Capitol? I represent the workers. I represent the people who are day in, day out working hard and making sure that we are treating them with respectability. I'm a no on Senate Bill 175, and I'm really sorry that it came forward. Thank you.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wasn't going to talk this morning. And I'm just going to be brief here at the moment because the senator from Aurora asked a question, who brought this bill and why? Now, I don't know why the senator would ask who brought this bill. If you go on the front page of the bill, it says Senate sponsorship, Gardner. Unless she's got me confused with our former colleague who's in Washington now, it's pretty clear who brought this bill. I did. And why did I bring it? Because one morning, several weeks ago, while I was eating breakfast, just so you know, Senator, while I was eating breakfast, I was reading a newspaper account of a public employee's strike in another part of the country. And I got to thinking about the fact that those collective bargaining agreements are often negotiated by people who are being paid by the taxpayers to negotiate against the interest of the elected officials and the government that the taxpayers fund. That's why I brought the bill, to answer the question of the senator from Aurora. Unlike other bills sometimes when I don't know exactly the moment in time or the place or the reason that I brought a bill, I mean, it happens over a course of time and so forth. This bill, I can tell you. And if I looked at the calendar long enough, Senator, I could tell you what day. And if I thought about it hard enough, I could tell you what general hour I had breakfast that Saturday morning. So, I'm who, and that's why, Senator, because this bill basically stands for the proposition that taxpayers should not have to pay for union activities. What this bill doesn't do, I would say to the senator from Arapahoe County who's rivaling Bob these days to become a verb, I would say to the senator from Arapahoe County, it doesn't prohibit collective bargaining. There's nothing in this bill that says collective bargaining is or isn't permitted. That continues to be up to local governments, whether they do it or don't do it. It continues to be up to the government entity, whether it chooses to collectively bargain or not. So, any implication or statement to the contrary is either just mistaken or disingenuous. That's not what this bill does. This bill doesn't prohibit public employees from organizing, associating. All of that would be clearly unconstitutional and something that I would oppose. Because I think those of you who have served with me for any length of time know that I'm a near absolutist when it comes to the First Amendment. Those workers, those employees have an absolute right to associate, to organize. All this bill says is you're not going to do it on the taxpayer nickel. You're not going to engage in union activities on the taxpayer nickel. We're not going to pay the shop steward. And sure enough, that happens in private industry. That's a different discussion for a different day as to whether or not, and let me, since I've started, this is not an attack on public sector unions. It may be perceived, maybe that's fair enough. If you want to characterize it that way, I would say to my fellow senator from El Paso County. But I have never, I would say to the senator from El Paso County, I have never suggested that there was any corruption involved. That was injected into this debate by the other side. I don't think it's corrupt to associate and argue for as much as one can get. I just think it's bad public policy for the state of Colorado to allow for the payment of union activities by its taxpayers. And as to whom I represent, I would say to the senator from Arapahoe County, yes, I represent the workers, but first and foremost, I represent the voters and taxpayers of my district. And the voters and taxpayers of my district are uniformly and universally shocked when they learn that they're paying for the handling of grievances on their nickel, the collective bargaining sitting at the table on their nickel, that they pay in school districts for one full-time person, at least one full-time person, to go around and handle the union association and organizing on their nickel. What this bill is an attack on is that practice. It says that needs to be done on the association or the union's nickel, from the dues that the workers pay. And if they believe in their association and they believe that it is doing for them what they want done, then they will not mind paying those dues for that activity. It's that simple. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did want to just thank the good senator from El Paso County for explaining where it came from. I do appreciate that, and understanding what happened in West Virginia with a group of teachers who strongly advocated for a decent pay salary. You know, that does create fervor, and I certainly understand that. So I do appreciate you answering that. There's several other comments and questions that I have about the bill, and so I will save that, and I will relinquish my time to the good senator from Louisville.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, the argument you just heard was workers shouldn't be able to do their organizing on the taxpayer dime, but management can. Let's change the names. Let's call management unions and unions management. If you did that, that means the management can't organize, but the union could. And that gets to my second point. If the taxpayers are paying for the workers, they're paying for the management too. But you can pay for the management under this bill, but you can't do the workers. What's up with that? It shows how this is just a one-sided bill to undermine regular people's opportunity to get together and have a better life. That's simple. Like I said earlier, many of us probably in our family have had union members, and it's an access to a better life. And because I firmly believe, because unions have declined in membership, the middle class, it's part of the reason the middle class is doing more poorly in this country. So I ask for a no vote on this bill. If you're going to treat employees one way, you got to treat management the same way, and you can't say one's more important than the other.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we heard from the senator from El Paso County indicating that this bill came from him. So that should not be up for debate because we know who the bill sponsor is. So my question is the motivation. What's the motivation behind this bill? And I think I got the answer regarding the motivation behind Senate Bill 175. The motivation is that you cannot conduct any union activity on a taxpayer's dime. That's the motivation. You know what I call that? I call that wage theft. If you have employees that work there, that are paid there and are compensated there, in their agreement, there is a union agreement that's already in place that allows for the structure, the infrastructure for these activities to take place. But what this bill will do, it will invalidate, it will strip that opportunity for union members to come together because they have to do it on their own time. And if they have to do that on their own time to address what's going on in their workplace, they have to do that outside the work hours, then that's considered wage theft because they should be allowed to be able to have those conversations and conduct those kinds of activities on the workplace property where it's already been agreed upon. There is already a contractual agreement. And now we want to upset that agreement and say you can no longer convene and have activities about your compensation unless you do it off hours? That's not how it works. When you have a contractual agreement, that's not how it works. You have management and you have employees, they come together and they come up with an agreement. They don't circumvent the agreement by saying, okay, if you want to have a dialogue, do it off hours. Don't do it on the taxpayer's dime. That is wage theft. It has to do with the culture and the climate of the organization as a public employee. It's not fair to ask those employees who are probably on minimum wages for them to have a discussion off hours when they should be cooking for their family, shopping, participating in their kids' soccer game. You're trying to say that when they're not at work, that's the only time they can have a conversation about union activity. That's what the motivation is. no discussion about compensation during your work hours. Now, even in private business, they wouldn't just allow that. Members, vote no on Senate Bill 175.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 175? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 175. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 175 is adopted. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Colleagues, the motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The aye has it, and we will rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the report, sir?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs lead report is out in consideration the following tax bills being the second reading thereof and makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 172 is amended. Senate Bill 175 is amended to pass the second read order gross place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 43. Senate Bill 116, House Bill 1138 laid over until 3/13/18 retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 1 laid over until 3/14/18 and retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I move the report.
You heard the motion. Are there any no? Oops, there is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, please read Cal Amendment 1.
Committee of the Whole Amendment 001, Senate Bill 175.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1.
Tell us about the amendment, Senator Kerr.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With all due respect, Mr. President, to the chair of the Committee of the Whole, I'm wondering if his ears were working just as well as they could. I know he's a young, fit senator, but I think he might have misheard the voice vote on this bill. And with that, I would it was my opinion that there are actually more no votes than there were aye votes at the time of the voice vote. And that is why I just at that very moment decided to run this Cal amendment and perhaps lengthen the debate on this bill just a little bit. I ask for an aye vote on the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1.
Is there any other discussion? Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I was actually just having a good discussion with the senator from Louisville about the high-tech hearing available right now. Turns out I'm sure I will need that someday. I don't yet. I'm pretty sure I very distinctly heard 18 ayes, and I think there were I think there were 15 no's is what I heard. We'll see, I suppose, but that's what I heard from standing up there, and I do regret that you have called my very detailed hearing into question.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the challenge of Senator Hill's hearing. Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem.
It is Mr. President when I'm here. Thank you, Senator Kagan.
Mr. President, my apologies. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in support of this Committee of the Whole Amendment. And I think the bill, and the reason that we should vote yes on this Committee of the Whole Amendment, is that I think the bill misapprehends the role of union activities in the workplace. And the bill suggests that when union activities take place, they are in opposition to the taxpayer or the employer where those union activities take place. Nothing could be further from the truth. When the unions discuss how to make the workplace a more harmonious, a more productive, a safer environment, that is to the benefit of the entire organization. That workers have a stake in a harmonious, productive, safe workplace is, of course, obvious. But that employers have a stake, that the taxpayers have a stake, that their public services are rendered, whether it be schools or whether it be anything else, that those services are rendered by a workforce that is working productively, working safely, working harmoniously with management. These cooperative ventures are to the benefit of all. Unions are not in opposition to their employers. Unions are in cooperation with their employers, giving the voice from the workplace, from the workforce, as to how to make the entire operation work better. And the more progressive employers understand this and solicit the help of their union-based employees when figuring out how to make for a better workplace. I just want to tell you a quick story that I witnessed firsthand. In the 1970s, I worked at the Dallas Love Field Airport in Dallas, Texas, a very conservative state, and I think it's fair to say a state antagonistic to unions. And a man who I knew to be at Love Field had started with one Boeing 737 aircraft, a little airline called Southwest Airlines. They had one route Dallas to Houston, which they sought to offer for less cost than the Greyhound bus. We who worked at the airport thought this man was crazy. And he was a very, very conservative guy. And we asked, what are you going to do about unions? Are you going to resist them? He said, no. Not only will I not resist them, I will encourage them. This was in Texas in the 1970s, in an organization, then a fledgling new startup organization, wondering how best to create a productive, happy, successful business. And he sought out participation of the unions. And look where it got Southwest Airlines. It got Southwest Airlines to be one of the best, happiest, most productive workplaces in the airline industry, with the highest rate of unionization in the airline industry. And that is because, members, unions are helpful in bringing a voice to the table as to how an organization can work better. So to suggest, as this bill does, that if we stop union activity being funded in the workplace, we somehow make for a better workplace or a more productive workplace is completely wrong. Unions help make a workplace more productive and better for all. And that's why it is so fundamentally wrong to say you can contribute this help of union activity, but we aren't going to pay for it. You might as well say planning lunches is something you can do, but we're not going to help pay for it. Planning staffing arrangements are something we will do as an organization, but we're not going to help pay for it. Planning safety is something we will do, but we will not pay for it. And so barring union activity is fundamentally detrimental to the health, safety, and productivity of a workplace. So I do urge you to vote no, to vote yes on the cow, and thereby reject this bill.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in support of this Committee of the Whole amendment. And I wanted to let the senator from El Paso County know that his hearing as a physician, your hearing might have been impaired because I know my ears were ringing after hearing the bill sponsor argue the bill. And I'm wondering if that's a symptom for which I can claim workman's compensation or not. But I would ask for your yes vote on the Committee of the Whole amendment.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I urge your aye vote on the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1, I did want to go a little bit into the history of collective bargaining, or the non-history of collective bargaining as far as our state employees go. If we go back to 2007, and I know a number of us were here in 2007, then Governor Ritter did sign an executive order that gave our state employees a little bit more in the way of bargaining rights, but didn't go all the way into collective bargaining. So specifically out of a Denver Post article, November 2nd, 2007, the executive order did not give state employees the powers of traditional collective bargaining. It contains a no-strike policy and specifies the new partnership agreements will not result in binding arbitration. But workers now will have the right to collectively negotiate on matters of workplace safety, training, and efficiency. Employees represented by the union of their choice can bargain on any, quote, issues of mutual concern, end quote, including wages, health care, and staffing. I bring this up because if we look at this, if employees are going to be having this discussion with their managers, especially around staffing and staffing levels. And please remember, I mentioned already that we had 25 people come in and testify against this bill, and 0 who testified for it. The majority of the 25 people who came in to testify against this bill worked in our corrections department. And I think corrections is really where we need to have discussions around staffing and staffing levels, especially making sure that our employees who are out there every day, making sure that our communities are safe, are staffed correctly. This is not something that a manager can just think up of on their own. This takes a discussion between the actual employees and whoever is managing that particular department. I would, in my opinion, Senate Bill 175 makes it more difficult for our corrections employees to have those conversations with the management because, as I mentioned a little earlier, this says an employment bargain means any formal or informal employment contract or understanding regarding the wages, benefits, or terms and conditions of employment of any public employee. And we also have a definition in here of union activities means activities that are performed by a union or union members or union representatives that relate to advocating the interests of member employees in wages, benefit, terms, and conditions of employment. I would say right there that flies in the face of this executive order that Governor Ritter put forth, especially when we're talking about wages, health care, and staffing. I would say I also want to include some reasonings that Governor Ritter put behind his executive order, saying that he signed an executive order instead of taking a proposal to the legislature because, quote, state employees operate within the purview of the executive branch, end quote. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed with him, and in fact, Representative Gardner said this should be discussed by the legislature, but instead it's a power grab. And let me make sure that we're talking about the correct Representative Cory Gardner of Yuma, not any other former Representative Gardner that we might be talking about. With that, one other thing that I did want to mention, the day that we heard this in committee was the same day that every member of the Senate not only voted for but also co-sponsored a resolution commemorating the 100-year anniversary of the International Association of Firefighters. Yes, we were talking about firefighters, but specifically this was the 100-year anniversary of an international firefighters union that we all voted for and co-sponsored, where we talked about making sure that we remembered in the aftermath of 9/11 the IAFF leadership participating in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and ensuring that firefighters would have prominent roles within that department. Probably those types of conversations could not happen under this bill, and that the IAFF continues to be the primary advocate for providing firefighters and paramedics with the tools they need to perform their jobs. Again, conversations that probably could not happen under this bill. With that, I want to make sure that everyone's ears are no longer ringing and that we all vote in favor of COW 001. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 175? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of COW Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 175. Are there any no votes? Senator Gardner, Senator Scott, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Lambert, Senator Lundberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Marble, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Neville, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Crowder, Senator Hill, Senator Priola, Senator Cook, Senator Coram, Please add the president. 15 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused. Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 is lost. Motion for the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 172 is amended. Senate Bill 175 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 43, Senate Bill 116, House Bill 1138, laid over until 3/13/18 and retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 1 laid over until 3/14/18 and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over consideration of resolution Senate Resolution 2 until Tuesday, March 13th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Resolution 2 until Tuesday, March 13th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read all the appointments on the consent calendar?
Members of the State Personnel Board, effective June 30, 2017, for terms expiring June 30, 2020, Michelle E. Palmquist, SPHR CP of Denver, Colorado, reappointed. Maurice G. Nizer of Denver, Colorado, appointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar consisting of members of the State Personnel Board.
Is there any discussion on any of the members on the governor's appointments consent calendar? Are there any no votes on any of the governor's appointments consent calendar? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, that motion is adopted. The following people are appointed to the State Personnel Board: Michelle E. Palmquist, Maurice G. Knizer. Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 9, 93, 94, 96, and 101. The President has signed Senate Bill 2046 and 100. The President has signed Senate Bill 3691 and 164. The President has signed Senate Bill 92 and 103. The President has signed Senate Joint Resolution 7.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to take up conference committee's report pending committee action, specifically House Bill 1171. Members, was noted earlier that this appeared to be in Thursday business. It is not. It is just listed at the end of floor the floor calendar, and before committee meetings on Monday, March 12th. It is just at the end of our floor calendar. So at this time, Mr. President, I do move to take up Conference Committee's report, House Bill 1171.
The motion is to take up the Conference Committee report on House Bill 1171. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and Conference Committee report to House Bill 1171 will be taken up. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the House Bill 1171?
House Bill 1171 by Representative Hamner and Senator Lundberg concerning adjustments in the amount of total program funding for public schools for the 2017-18 budget year in connection therewith, making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the first report of the First Conference Committee on House Bill 1171. And members and Mr. President, if you recall, this is the supplemental bill for the Education, the School Finance Act, and we had a bit of a disagreement with the House as to whether we should fund everything on a per pupil basis as the Constitution requires, or put the total amount in, which would amount to an additional $7 million going to schools. The resolution of that was found by taking those additional monies beyond the per pupil funding. And let me just read it to you. The General Assembly shall appropriate from the State Public School Fund for purposes of school safety. For purposes of school safety, $7,033,883. And so we are taking those additional dollars and saying those should be sent towards school safety. I ask for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the first report on the first conference committee on House Bill 1171. Is there any discussion? Are there any no votes on consideration of the conference committee report? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, the first report of the first conference committee on House Bill 1171 is adopted. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the readoption of House Bill 1171 as amended by the first report of the first conference committee on House Bill 1171.
You have heard the motion. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, as you could tell by my last vote, and my next vote will be an aye vote as well. I just want to take a moment to come down and thank all 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee for their hard work in working out a deal here. I don't think anyone got everything that they wanted, but I think this bill is better than where we were debating it before, and I would like to personally thank each of the 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee for their hard work in making this possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to thank the Joint Budget Committee for coming up with a very creative solution, I got to say. My only complaint is I can't read who signed the report. I can read 3 of them. The school teacher I can read, but the others I have a hard time with.
The motion before the body is the readoption of House Bill 1171. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1171 is readopted. Co-sponsors. Anyone? Senator Donovan. Senator Todd. Senator John. Senator Merrifield. Senator Aguilar. Senator Martinez-Humanic. Senator Kerr. Senator Court. Senator Jones. Senator Zenzinger. Announcements. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a heads up to the Appropriations Committee. We will have some bills to consider tomorrow morning at 8:35 at our regularly scheduled location.
Senator Kofalos was next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Just another reminder that the Children's Caucus is meeting today at noon, 12 to 1:15 in SCR 357. Lunch will be provided, and there'll be 2 presentations, one on the 2-generation prevention strategy regarding child care, and the other on the Cliff Effect pilot program and an evaluation of that. Today at 12 noon. Thank you.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to reverse myself from Friday, the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee meeting will be today at 1:30. So 30 minutes earlier than I announced from last week. So apologize for the confusion. 1:30 today, Business Committee. In addition, students from Florence Crittenden High School are here today, and they will be down in the House Committee Room area. They're special students that are finishing their high school education while having had a child and that's being taken care of at the school with them. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm saddened today. Colleagues, I feel a little sick in my stomach today. I say this because the state capitol is not a place for sexual harassment. Members, I feel like there is this dark cloud that's hovering over the Senate floor and hovering over the state capitol as it relates to sexual harassment. I'm saddened today, Mr. President. I took the oath of office, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I've served in the House of Representatives, and I'm in my 2nd year of my 4-year term in the Senate. And when I took that oath of office, I pledged to defend the Constitution and to defend and fight for the people of Colorado. I'm saddened today, Mr. President, because I just can't stop thinking about our code of ethics. I can't stop thinking about our principles. And when I first came down here, one of my greatest challenges was to understand the mechanics and how to navigate this place. And we do it very well. We know when the coat rule is relaxed, we take off our jackets, at least the guys do. That's a standard. That's a principle. We know that the sergeants aren't just going to let anyone just run down the center of the aisle, because we do have a code of ethics and practice. I'm saddened today because when it comes to deal with issues around women and sexual harassment, I'm confused about what the standard is. When we have silence, when abuse is going on, what happens is the abuse continues. Time is up. What are the norms that we have here? I've worked in higher ed. I've worked in nonprofit organizations. I've worked in the private sector. And now I serve the state of Colorado. And one thing that has been clear in every organization that I ever worked in is that you have to keep your hands to yourself. In a business environment, you can't slap anybody on their butt. There's some things that you just can't do. And if you do it, what happens? There's a swift and an immediate investigation. And after the investigation, if they find out that those behaviors were done, they are asked to leave the organization. They no longer have the privilege to work in the private sector if you decide to touch a woman inappropriately. In the business sector, in the government sector, or a nonprofit organization, if you touch a woman like that, you are removed from the workplace. It's just not tolerated. So I'm saddened because I'm confused about the code of ethics and principles that we have down here. Who are we protecting? And who are we fighting for? I know that I'm fighting for the people of Colorado. I'm fighting for every girl, every boy, every man, every father, every person to be treated with respect and dignity. I didn't come down here to defend anyone that's not going to live up to the standards of being a good senator in the state of Colorado. If you put your hands on somebody and it's not warranted, that's unethical. We should not be protecting that kind of behavior. It's belittling. You might have daughters, you might have a sister, you might have a wife. Really, would you want someone tapping that loved one on their butt just because? I don't know why someone would do that. Why would you do that anyway? We didn't get here in our life all this time without having values and principles. We were raised right. That's why we're able to serve, because we do have principles. But Mr. President, I keep looking in the sky, I keep looking to the right, and I keep looking for the left, I keep looking for Superman or Superwoman. Who's gonna address the code of ethics as it relates to misbehavior and sexual misconduct? It may not have been your aide. It may not have been your wife or your mother. But everyone deserves to have basic human rights. You keep your hands to yourself. Members, it's not our jobs to invalidate a woman's experience. That's why we had an outside independent consultant come in to evaluate the merits of what happened. They came back and they said that the reports and the allegations were valid. But we're spending far too much time in validating a woman's experience. That's not our job. That's not our job. We already had somebody investigate. It's not our job to say, well, I don't really believe it. And when we say that, we're being bystanders instead of upstanders. We need to stop being bystanders with blinders on our eyes and pretending like this incident didn't happen. It did happen, and we have reports to validate it. So I'm concerned. What is our code of practice down here? I don't want to work in a black cloud. I'm here to push holes into darkness. I'm here to speak for the people and for the women who are still silent because they're waiting for us to take some action. I'm here to fight for the faceless, the people who haven't yet come forward. What is our code of practice? Mr. President, you know that we have lots of work to do. We have a budget to pass. And you know what else we have? We have a legacy to build. And we will be judged by our history. We have a legacy to build. So, Mr. President, I stand with the women in the Capitol and outside the Capitol. I can no longer allow disgusting behavior to go unchecked. I just can't sit around and wring my hands and throw my hands up and to feel hopeless. I've been doing that now for the last 4-6 weeks. I'm saddened. I want the dark cloud lifted because we have work to do and we have a legacy to build. So who are we defending and what are we fighting for? When we don't address abusers, then the behavior continues. So with this in mind, the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus ask that the Senate resolution that we prepared and submitted for introduction on February the 13th, 2018, entitled Concerning the Expulsion of the Senator from Northwestern Colorado for Sexual Harassment of a Legislative Employee, be promptly introduced and brought to the floor of the Senate for a full debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we recess the Senate until 1:30 p.m. today.
The motion is for the Senate to be in recess till 1:30 p.m. today. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and we will stand in recess.